Original sin. Given the importance and the complexity that baptism holds in Dante's poem, it will be opportune to singularly analyze the various aspects correlating to this sacrament from the beginning of the problem, that is, from original sin. The idea that Adam and Eve had performed such an action that its consequences were so serious for all of humanity is unequivocally present in the comedy. But what is the nature of this sin? Dante has Adam say it in person. The cause of my long exile did not lie within the act of tasting of the tree, but solely in my trespass of the boundary. Paradise 26, 115 to 117. So it's not a sin of greed, nor lust, nor concupiscence. It doesn't even involve disobedience. The commentators say that these verses speak of pride, even if, perhaps, the trespass of the boundary was more than pride, and was hubris, the great sin of Greek tradition, excess. In consequence of original sin, says the Catechism, human nature is diminished in its strength, subject to ignorance, to suffering, to the power of death, and inclined to sin, the inclination that is called concupiscence. It is a worrying prospect and difficult to accept. Over the years I have tried to delve deeper and understand what both sin and the earthly paradise, this place of delights in which our forefathers lived and from which they were cast out, might have alluded to. The curious thing is that the myth of a paradise lost is present in all traditions, even in that of ancient Greece. It is the, page 157, so-called Golden Age, a happy primordial time when Kronos, Saturn, reigned, and according to Hesiod's account, men lived as gods, worry-free, sheltered from toil and misery. They didn't know old age, and they didn't work because the earth naturally produced abundant harvests. Not having to work also characterized the biblical earthly paradise, and Dante also describes it this way. When they reached it after the long and laborious ascent up the mountain of Purgatory, Virgil will say to him, "Look at the grasses, flowers, and the shrubs born here spontaneously of the earth. How marvellous! Everything springing up of itself and no need to work." In fact, the expulsion from the earthly paradise brought work. You will work, you will sweat. The same thing happens in Greek-Roman mythology, where at a certain moment Saturn introduces the use of the scythe and teaches to better use the spontaneous fertility of the soil. So the myth narrates, and men began to work. It's exactly the same story, except that in the Bible, work is viewed as a punishment, and in Greek-Roman myth, it's a gift. Hesiod says they lived like the gods, but I say they lived like animals. Animals, in fact, do not work and eat that which the earth produces just by itself, exactly as it is described in the earthly paradise. According to me, this very ancient story, also present in other traditions, alludes to that moment after millennia in which man is becoming human, that is, has become conscious of himself, and comes out of, but without sin and someone chasing him out, from that harmony that rules in nature. Harmony full of violence, because the animals tear each other apart. But no one can reproach them for this. It's their nature. They don't dress and they mate when and wherever it happens, but none finds it improper. It is their nature. Man came out from all this. It's not a case of disobeying some divine ban. That is not the point. The point is that man has begun to think that some things might be bad, for example, to walk around naked. Indeed, the Bible says that Adam and Eve were ashamed of their nakedness, and they covered it with fig leaves. The animals never saw it as a problem, exactly as Adam and Eve never saw it as, before, page 158, the so-called sin. Man also became conscious that he must die. He has not become mortal. He has understood being mortal. It's a matter of consciousness, consciousness of good and evil that, not by chance, is the name of the notorious tree. This consciousness meant leaving a condition of blessedness that will seem more correct to me to be defined as unconsciousness. This concerns humanity, but there is also a leaving of a state of equal bliss unconsciousness at the level of the individual, the detachment from the maternal womb. In great as in small, in the collective as in the individual, there is a process identical in many ways, becoming less of a paradisial state, that is, without work, without worries, a state that we have a vague memory of and immense nostalgia. And it is this nostalgia that has fed all the myths of the Golden Age and the earthly paradise. But would we really want to return to it? I don't really think so. Obviously, I don't know if Dante would have shared my opinions, but one thing is certain. The earthly paradise is defined by him as the place chosen to be mankind's nest, and the nest is the starting point, not the point of arrival nor that of return. We need to leave the nest if we wish to fly. The destined place, that is, the home destined by God to all men, the final goal of human nature, is elsewhere. It is the heavenly paradise. Moreover, also when, thanks to Jesus Christ, were opened, as the Catechism says, the doors of paradise in a way that Adam and all those who are distanced from it are able to enter. It's not a case of returning to that place of delight where everything grows by itself, but of access to a paradise that had nothing to do with that. The so-called original sin is not then, to my mind, anything other than the result of natural evolution that has brought us to the use of reason. Going by this interpretation, it's obvious that such a faculty, that the Catechism insists on calling stain and sin and fault, transfers from generation to generation, and it is undeniable that this manifests itself only in adulthood, that is, contrary to what the Church claims, is not present at birth, not even in first infancy. This is, in my opinion, what Dante also claims, although not in an explicit way, page 159, but rather through the use of key words, harmless. Here, mankind's root was innocent, says Matilda, referring to the earthly paradise, while the other few times the adjective innocent or the noun innocence appears in the comedy, it always refers only to infancy. Now, given that Matilda's statement without doubt refers to before original sin, it seems evident to me that the repeated and exclusive use of this term in reference to children had a clear function, to equate it with that before original sin, which is tantamount to denying it, that is, to think that there might not be original sin that stained the souls of children. It is this that the Cathars believed, but also the opinion that comes true in the words of Jesus. Leave them, don't stop the children coming to me. Whoever becomes like them, to them belongs the kingdom of the heavens. And, if you do not become like children, you will not enter into the kingdom of the heavens. It can also be said that the expression original sin never appears in Dante's poem, but not even in the Bible, nor above all in the Gospels. To speak the truth, there is a hint in the Gospels. When Jesus has healed the blind man, it is said, "You are born altogether in sin." But it is not Jesus speaking, but the Pharisees. There are always Pharisees, and I want to bring to memory that Dante defines Pope Boniface VIII as the prince of the new Pharisees. That is to say, the religious authority thirsty for power that wants to instill in people the nightmare of sin, the sense of guilt, insecurity, and fear. The passage in John's Gospel in the CEI edition says, "Into the world came the true light, that which illuminates every man." That Igor Sibaldi sharply notes contains a very culpable error in translation. The original Greek and the Latin translation have quite another meaning that Sibaldi translates correctly. It was the true light that illuminates every man who comes into this world, and comments, any baby, in the instant it comes into this world, is illuminated by this light of truth, that is then lost and must be refound. In short, in this little verse in John's Gospel, original sin is explicitly denied.